Hey guys, King of Charmanders here, and today I bring to you the best Kushala Daora Melee builds. Dancing in the Tempest. This video analyzes the best builds for Kushala Melee Weapons. We will take into account the best armor pieces based on the difficulty to get them. Example, Kulu Greaves versus Kushala Greaves. One's easier than the other. Of course, Kushala is harder. Remember, highest damage doesn't necessarily mean the best unless it's by a lot and taking other factors into account. If it's literally like 2% or it's super close, it's hit or miss, you can use what you want. And ranged weapons will have their own separate videos as they require more in-depth analysis. The Kushala Light Bowgun and the Kushala Bow are two incredibly strong weapons. However, are they worth using them? We're going to have to do a lot more of an in-depth analysis to see just what builds are the best for the Light Bowgun and again the Kushala Bow. And let's jump right into it. Here's using Kushala armor versus not using Kushala armor. Kushala armor and weapons are expensive. We're talking about the weapons here, but do you really need the armor? Kushala weapons are of the ice element, so they benefit from the Kushala Frostwind equipment skill. However, if we take a look at the data, here's the data, there is a very little difference between using the Kushala gear for a non-Driftsmelted build. In fact, the difference is only a little over 1%. Right here we have 3,941 with Kushala Greaves versus 3,895 with Kulu Greaves. So that's, again, 1%. That's not a lot. I mean, unless you're a supremacist and you really want the biggest numbers, there's no... If you don't want to use a Kushala Greaves, you don't have to do it. Again, so unless you're just a super numbers player, it's perfectly fine if you don't use Kushala gear and just use something else in the leg slot instead. Whether that be Diablos legs for the Slugger 2 or something else. Kulu legs, which give you critical eye level 2 at grade 6, are perfectly fine. And now we have the best Kushala melee build, non-Driftsmelted, so no driftstones. This build applies to the following weapon types: sword and shield, greatsword, longsword, hammer, dual blades, charge blade, and lance, with a theoretical damage of 3,941. And like I mentioned, this is barely higher than the build without Kushala legs, which is the Kulu legs at 3,895. So you can opt to switch the Kushala Greaves out if you want with Kulu. Again, 1% is barely the difference, unless you're a super supremacist and you just want to flex those Kushala legs all over the place, then you can use the Kushala legs. And you can customize this build whether you want to use another legs armor, as it's... Even if you don't have the legs armor, which would be the 2 crit, you can do it like I mentioned before. You could use Diablos legs for Slugger 2. It's really up to you. Or you could use like Focus level 2 with like your hammer or your greatsword, for example. So you can swap out the legs. For this one, because we see how close the damage is, and if we take it out, you don't really need to worry about it too much, and you can use it to fit your playstyle. However, the leg slot is really the only thing you could really customize because the other 4 pieces are really necessary to get Elemental Attack 5, and to get Lock On if you want to use Lock On. But before we go on to the build itself, here's analyzing other top Kushala melee builds. Here we have the top 5 builds measured up with the Kushala Greaves build. As you see here, there is a very little drop off in effectiveness if you happen to modify the build using different pieces. There's latent power, there's critical eye, etc. There's even bursting here. So, because the drop-off is so small, as you see the difference, like I mentioned, even more justification for you to customize. So use the build that best suits your playstyle. As long as you have Ice Attack 5, you're good when it comes to the melee weapons, except for a few exceptions. We're going to go over that later. And now we finally move on to the build and the armor pieces. This build maxes Ice Attack level 5. Coral Puke Helm provides lock-on, but if you don't have it, you can just use the Kulu Helm. So again, the Coral Puke Helm is really expensive, so if you don't have that, you could just replace it with the Kulu Helm. Windproof and Kushala's Frostwind can help a little bit in wind pressure situations. It's not going to do a lot, but depending on where you're at, it might help a little bit. But it's not something you should depend on. Offense is more than defense in Monster Hunter now, that's how it works, so take defense with a grain of salt. As Artful Dodger is also a good defensive skill to have. Again, don't rely on it too much, but Artful Dodger is definitely nice because it's easier for you to execute perfect evades. Skyward Striker and Ice Resistance are really meh, but Skyward Striker can do a little bit of extra damage for weapon types that can use them. Now, I'm not saying for you sword and shield users, back hop aerial shield bash to oblivion, no. Your main damage is still going to come from you just doing consistent damage overall. versus a small 15%. So yes, depending on what weapon you're using, it's just an extra nice bonus. Until something like the Insect Glaive comes around, the Skyward Striker is still kinda meh. To use this build, you need the Coral Puke helmet at grade 8, the Bariath Mail at grade 6, Bariath Fan Braces at grade 6, Legionic Coil at grade 6, and the Kushala Daora Greaves at grade 8. And last but not least, we have the Kushala Gunlance build. Artillery takes priority with Gunlance. Unfortunately, you can only get Artillery level 3, as it is as high as you can get right now. You can't get to level 5. And Ice Attack should be the next highest priority. However, it is a long ammo type Gunlance, so mixing in charge shots with your Gunlance will max damage at the right opportunities. Of course, this assumes you're using all of the Gunlance's attacks at their fullest potential. If it's a pure charge Gunlance style where you're going to sit there, turtle, and play Mega Man, it's not worth investing into a Kushala Gunlance for it because you aren't using it for the elemental weakness damage. Take into consideration that you are investing in a Kushala Daora weapon, a Elder Dragon weapon, where you have to raid and get it really high. In that case, in the consideration of expensive and the fact that you're going to have to raid a lot for it if you're going to get to a high grade anyways, you might want to reconsider just going to a different kind of Gunlance. This is because Monster Hunter now is not like other games. If you could sit at home and do all this grinding, that'd be perfectly kosher. However, Monster Hunter now, you need to be outside, and that's why efficiency and using the best builds is probably your best route because it is far more difficult. I've done thousands of Pokemon Go raids going after the best Pokemon. It's not worth to do thousands of raids if you're going to go after something that's not really worth it. So the thing about it is the Kushala Gunlance isn't the best charge Gunlance style Gunlance out there because you're not going to crit or use elemental weakness anyways. So again, consider that before you build the Kushala Gunlance. To use this build, you need the Kushala Daora Gunlance at grade 8 or grade 10 or as high as you can get it, the Coral Puke helmet at grade 8, the Bosarios Mail at grade 6, the Bariath Fan Braces at grade 6, the Legionic Coil at grade 6, and the Bosarios Greaves at grade 4. Hopefully this build helps you out with making your best Kushala build. Remember, the best build is one you're personally best at. Kushala is expensive and raid only, so really consider whether or not you want to invest in making the weapons and armor. I will get my 10-5 Kushala weapon and I will spend money on Ultra Hunting tickets because I want to. For those of you doing the same thing, if you're spending money on Monster Hunter now, by all means, I appreciate you. I appreciate what you do because you're supporting the game. Without you and everybody else spending money, this game doesn't operate and doesn't go on because that's how mobile game works. I had someone comment on one of my videos saying there is no data support that you should spend money on Monster Hunter now. Actually, there is because this game only exists because people are spending money on it. Otherwise, we'd end up like the next Harry Potter. But because this game is the second most highest grossing game besides Pokemon Go, this game will stay and is out to be a forever game for a very long time. So, for those of you shaming the ones spending money, guess what? The only reason this game exists is because the ones that are spending money on it. So, if you aren't broke or if you can't do it, it's your fault and not theirs and definitely not mine. Please do me a huge favor, like, subscribe, and comment for the YouTube algorithm. Good luck on your grinds. Again, if you're going after the Kushala weapons, I wish you the best of luck in getting those Rarity 6 Daora horns. And if you're not, that's perfectly fine. You can still use the other weapons and they'll still work out really well for you. Again, good luck on your grinds, and I will see y'all on the next video.